Welcome. So glad to have you here with us today. Hopefully, Roz will be showing up. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start the show. I'm Ivory LaNoue, and today's topic is awakening to the fifth dimension. Before I get started with that, I want to say hello to our listeners in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. I have to say, I was so excited to see you showing up on our stats because I have a soft spot in my heart for Slippery Rock. I used to go to a large Renaissance camping event there every August for a very long time. And I think it's starting like next week too. And I miss it. Slippery Rock is a lovely little community. So thank you for being part of our audience. And if there's ever an episode, a topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know. Let's jump into this. So what does it mean? Like, let's talk about third dimension. Let's start there. So third dimension is where most people are living right now. And if you are in the third dimension, living in the third dimension, you'll know because you'll be very concerned about making money, your status, how you look, different races, religion, fear, cliques, being in cliques. Anything that helps differentiate yourself and pure survival and kind of hedonistic pleasure. In the third dimension, there's a lot of blaming, shaming, and categorizing, putting labels on people and things. And there's also a lot of outdated thinking about men, women, sexuality, and there's a lot that needs to be healed about that. There's so much objectification in the third dimension. And so we're seeing that probably now more than ever. We kind of are seeing ourselves, thanks to social media, as products or brands, and we're hyper aware of the price of everything versus the value of things. So when you shift to the fourth dimension, which is all about you, your personal frequency, your spiritual journey, your personal growth, when you shift to the fourth dimension, what's going to be different is you're going to see the magic begin. You're aware there's more than the physical world, and you start to touch on the realm of things that are paranormal, supernatural, and eventually integrating them more and more as real. So now we're getting closer and closer to the fifth dimension. Some people are already living in that fifth dimension consciousness, and there's others who are shifting. And it's part of the reason why there's so much chaos in the world right now, because the people who are not on a spiritual journey, who are very firmly living in third dimension, don't know what's going on, and they feel the change, they feel the shift, but they don't know what it is, and it raises fear and uncertainty and anxiety, which is another form of fear. So those of us who are aware, are becoming aware today in this show, need to really help those people by just concentrating on shifting ourselves forward. So just kind of like a little mini guide for you is about moving into the fifth dimension. So when you ascend to the fifth dimension, you'll know it because now there's more love, there's unity, there's acceptance of change itself, which is constant. You know, the only constant is change. The fifth dimension has growth opportunity for all of us, and that we learn the ability to cope, create, manage, and manipulate change. And it's kind of like you're not going someplace totally different. You just have changed within you. And so you're operating on a different level of consciousness. So the growth aspect of the fifth dimension is the ability to move through change, manipulating it in ways that are kind, loving, considerate of self and the collective, others, and respectful of the grander plan of unfoldment. You know, I often have said, we say this at Sedona Soul Sisters a lot, is, everything in divine time. We cannot force things to happen sooner than they're meant to, or if they're not even meant to. So we have to sometimes just let things unfold as they're meant to. Here's a quote Albert Einstein said about the fifth dimension. I think it's really interesting. He said there's been a great deal of discussion about the Earth, Terra Gaia, moving into the fifth dimension. This speaks to a fundamental misunderstanding of the quality of dimensions. The dimensions are not fixed points on a compass. They are a circle, dancing, moving, and expanding constantly. There is constant movement with and between all of dimensions. They are fluid. The planet, animal, and human kingdoms collectively have been intensely learning the lessons of constant change. And I think that's a beautiful way to put this. We tend to be very concrete in how we look at things, including dimensions. So when we start to live from a fifth dimension reality, we find we're full of self-love, and we need less to sustain us. So what that means is not ego. It's actually more a matter of stepping out of ego, but the self-love is accepting ourselves, forgiving ourselves, seeing ourselves as doing the best we can do, not being hypercritical, being our own best friend, being as kind to yourself as you would be to the person you love most in this world. So fifth dimension isn't about survival and competition anymore. You have compassion for yourself and others. You can forgive or overlook so many things because you know it isn't about you. It's about their journey. It's about their experiences, their reactions. So you can kind of let go of that. Suddenly you have this positive level of detachment, which might sound negative, but it's really not. Because if you can get to that level of detachment, you are not mired in the emotion of other people's journey. It allows you to be more efficient or helpful than you were in 3D or 4D, when you would feel the fear of life and death, always worried about the other shoe dropping, or, oh, what's going to happen next, or absorbing the heavy negativity and then pay a price for it. And right now, wow, with the negativity rolling around our planet right now, the dense energy, more than ever, it's important to work towards this fifth dimension being where you detach yourself from it. So let's talk about relationships in the fifth dimension. What are they like? Well, they're lighter, and they're more about love, patience, allowing someone to have their feelings, their own path, and their healing process from all the distorted ideas that they absorbed in the 3D experiences of life. You also will find that relating is easier. It's faster to trust the connection between you and another person, more intuitive, more meaningful. There's no mask or fake it till you make it in 5D. It doesn't exist. So love is based purely on authenticity. You will feel more real, and others will be real with you. Doesn't that sound amazing? You drop a huge layer of dense energy you were carrying. I found this list online, and I did make some changes in it, but this is a great list of what it's like to live in the fifth dimension. And I'm telling you this because hopefully a lot of you will recognize some things happening in your life that maybe you didn't know had anything to do with shifting into the fifth dimension, or it's something for you to look forward to and keep an eye out for. So you are living mostly in the fifth dimension when you believe and have experienced oneness and the unity consciousness. I know what that's like. When you suddenly feel love for all mankind, there is no us and them. There is no enemies. There is no less than, more than. It's that oneness. And that is God love. That is pure God love as it was intended to have love for all mankind. The next is notice that the fear, the need for safety, and a lack of trust no longer exist. So that's a good one to work toward. It's hard, especially these days. We talked about that dense energy, which is fear, uncertainty, anxiety permeating the planet right now. So you don't want to sink into that or be a part of that. You want to rise above that. Next is you observe the old polarities and now blend them together in harmony. So you see how you thought, how life was in the third dimension and the fourth dimension, and you're taking the lessons from that and moving it forward into the fifth dimension where you are who you are now. Next, you operate only from inner guidance or intuition. That is a really important one. I know there's a lot of people, like I do readings, yes, but I do not like my clients to be addicted to my readings or too reliant upon them. I feel like my goal is to get people to a point where you have trust in your own intuition, your own guidance, and the angels, that you don't need to come to somebody for a reading unless you're in a state where you're so something's really big happening and it's very close to home for you, and it can really make it hard to tap into your intuition or trust what you're getting. But in the fifth dimension, even that goes away, and you can purely trust on your own inner guidance. Next, you have no physical pain. That's a clear signal that you are moving into living in the fifth dimension, because physical pain is a third dimension issue. Now, it's very likely you're going to have some of these where you're partially living in the fifth dimension and partially still in the third dimension. It does not happen all at once as one massive shift. It's a slow, gradual change. So if you have some of these, you're doing great. You're moving in, you're making your way to the fifth dimension. Next, you're aware everything is interconnected and every loving thought affects everyone. Now, we've talked about that with manifesting, what you think, what you talk about creates your reality, but what you create is affecting everyone else's reality as well, which is why it's so important right now to think about love, unity, peace, acceptance. When you give loving thoughts to other people, you are giving it to yourself. Wow, there you go. And when you give loving thoughts to yourself, you're giving it to others. Next, you surrender all control of thoughts and actions to a higher power or God. And you just trust that God is there and watching over you, or your higher power, whatever is comfortable for you to call it, that you trust that it's there. There's something bigger. There's a grand design here, and you trust in that. Next, you have no needs that are not already being supplied. Here's a good one to work towards that if that's not true for you already. Every time you worry about money or not having the things that you need, not want, things that you need, you say out loud, angels, God, I always like to say God and angels, thank you for making sure all my needs are met. Thank you for having all my needs met. And you can just say, I trust you. All my needs will always be met. And that is true. Next, you know that you have no needs that are not already being supplied. So you start to really see the difference between a need and a want or desire. And the want and desires start to taper off, drop off, till you're just left with your needs, and you're very happy, satisfied with your needs being met. And I'll tell you one thing I see as a huge sign of a major shift in that direction is the tiny home movement. Whether people are living in a van or living in a motorhome, a trailer, or those literal tiny homes, I'm so drawn to them. But I don't know if I've got like a whole room of musical instruments that I'm not willing to give up. I'd need an extra tiny home for my instruments. But the point being that getting rid of things. So you want to cut down, you want to get rid of your things. You feel desire to downsize your items, get rid, pare down, and you may feel the need to go to a smaller home, simplify your life. Less things means less things to take care of, less things to worry about somebody taking from you. How much needs do you really have? So if you're already at a point where you're completely let go of that and you're focused just on what your needs are and trusting they'll be met, that part of you is living in 5D, I'm happy to tell you. The next is believe that reality has nothing to do with what we see, hear, or touch. That's probably one of the last ones to happen, because humans are very much tuned to not believing in something till they experience it, which is why I have got this mission to teach people to feel their angels and hear them and see them. Because I know that once you experience that, that you'll know for sure for yourself. And until that, I'm just telling you, or other people are just telling you. Same is true for all of this. Like, you have to know there's something so much more than what you personally have seen, felt, touched, experienced. Things can exist far outside of that, and they do. And once you start believing that, like, you'll start experiencing it, you open to it, then you experience it. And then in your heart, there's so much more out there, so much more. It's like this vast, unexplored territory. I've heard so many times, like, the only unexplored area left on the planet is the deep ocean. But then there's this vast, unexplored territory that is what is not seen by most people, what is not heard, what is not touched. That is a fantastic place. Realize that the only real choice you have is either love or fear. And so when you choose love and you choose to live in love and feel love, and I think that here's a big one. I realized a few years ago, just all of a sudden, I realized that somebody I felt like I had hated, I didn't feel hate for them anymore. And I tried to, like, this sounds so weird, but I tried to summon it up to feel hatred in myself. I could not do it. And I'm like, this is interesting. I love my scientific experiments. Let's see, let me think of some other people that are truly, kind of horrible people, and see if I could muster up a sense of hate. I could not. And so I know what that's like all of a sudden the ability to feel hate is just gone. And that's another part of you shifting into the fifth dimension. Another one is accepting everyone and everything. Unconditional love. You are who you are. I love you just the way you are. You're on your journey. I respect your journey. Maybe you choose to not step on a spiritual path at all in this lifetime. Fine. Maybe that's not what you're supposed to do. Maybe that's not what this lifetime's about for you. It's okay. You make your choices. I'll make mine. That doesn't mean I'm okay with people hurting other people, but I think that you've got to come to a place where you accept people as they are. So that's about not trying to change them. And when you're focused on yourself, being a better person, raising your frequency, progressing on your personal spiritual journey, you don't have so much time or energy to worry about what other people are doing. Doesn't mean you don't care, but you're not so overly involved in getting emotional about other people's choices. Another one is you are aware that the people come into your life and what happened doesn't really matter. What does matter is the love you share. So for instance, in my case, I've been married a couple of times, and I'm very appreciative of the beautiful times we had, like my daughter that came out of my first marriage and how much love and joy she has brought into my life. I'm appreciative of the good times I had with that first husband. I can see like the good times that were there. And with my second marriage, there were some great things there. You got to focus on the beautiful moments, the love that you had, and just kind of take that as a gift and hold it in your heart and let the rest of it go, because it's not about how the relationship ended, whether it's romantic or a friendship or a business relationship. It's about what you shared during the time you were meant to be together that was good, that was positive, and the lessons that came out of it. Love is the core of everything. Like when you can feel how important love truly is, you'll know you're really shifting into the fifth dimension. Another one is knowing that love transforms all negativity. And that is why there's millions of us right now who are sending love out to these areas where there's war and hatred and fear. And when one country's trying to take over another country, fear is at the base of that. They're afraid of losing their way of life, of losing their sense of power. They're clinging desperately to third dimension issues. And the same goes true for an individual as it would for a country. So a bully person has a lot of fear. So if you send hatred, love, hatred and violence into hatred and violence, you will manifest more hatred and violence. The only thing that's going to heal that is love. And so you can send the energy of love into a situation, whether it's between two people or two countries. So think about that. Another one is learn that you don't have to do anything or go anywhere to get meaningful insights or have amazing experiences. So, I always wanted to go to Machu Picchu, and my parents went there and they kind of burst my bubble about it. They're like, first off, it had rats, and they know I hate rodents. Oh my God. So I'm like, rats, count me out. But I don't know. So a lot of people will go to a place thinking they're going to have this major spiritual awakening, and they do. A lot of people do. You don't have to go anywhere. You can have it in your own home, in your backyard, at a nearby park. It's what happens within you. If you tell yourself, I can't have it till I go to Machu Picchu, then you probably won't have it. So start telling yourself, I can achieve all the spiritual enlightenment, all the spiritual growth I need right here in my day-to-day routine. You're not missing out. You're not prevented from achieving that because you can't go to a certain place. Next, you can focus on the experience of watching God or your higher power orchestrate a plan that is so perfect it takes your breath away. I love to look at how things in very negative situations in my personal life and worldview later, like, all unfolded in this way that led to something magnificent or beautiful or a big shift forward that I don't think I could have seen that was happening, and I couldn't have seen a way to make it happen for myself or by myself. So I think that's another good one. If you're experiencing something like that, then just another sign for you. And lastly, you have an energy field, an aura that moves faster and is more fluid. And I think that that can be a hard one to know if it's happening. So I wouldn't focus on that one too much, but it is one of the signs. If we get to the point where we could totally let go into the oneness, I don't know if we'd be on Earth. Who knows? Maybe there are other dimensions to explore. There's certainly dimensions beyond the fifth, but we're going to focus today on the fifth. Let's not overwhelm ourselves with layer upon layer of dimensions we need to work through. We know there's others. You might experience all these signs in different moments. Very few people have this massive sudden boom shifting from fourth to fifth dimension or third to fifth dimension. I think that would be too much of a shock to the system. We all have a unique experience when it comes to our personal and spiritual growth, and we're not going, I often will share with you like my personal experience, but that doesn't mean you'll have the same experience. That doesn't mean that it's going to be at all the same for you. So I want to go deeper into a little bit of like some more signs that you are shifting into or already living in the fifth dimension. One is that you don't recognize your life anymore. Like, you suddenly wake up, not literally like wake up in the morning, but like just suddenly you realize you feel totally out of place. You don't fit in your own life. Everything around you is familiar, but you don't belong in that life anymore. And I see this frequently with people coming to me to say things like, I just don't think this marriage, just suddenly I realized this marriage, I don't think we're meant to be together. We don't have anything in common anymore. And I don't think he understands me. I don't understand him. And even more than that one is saying, I've worked in this job for a long time and I just loved it. And all of a sudden I realize this just doesn't fill my soul. I have no passion for this work anymore. I don't know how I didn't see it before now. It was like they're in this automaton state going through life, and then they realize, but what's happening is you've been growing personally and spiritually and shifting and raising your frequency, and you've maybe been so busy with all of that, preoccupied with all of that, that you just suddenly have this epiphany moment where you realize the life you've been living isn't the one that's for you now. And It's like you're living someone else's life. So if you wake up one day questioning your job, your lifestyle, even the place you're living in, it's not middle age crisis. I mean, even if you're middle aged, it doesn't mean you're in a middle age crisis. Your soul knows what you need better than the human side of you does. And your soul, your higher self, will be talking to you and urging you, guiding you towards what you need right now for who you are now. When you awaken and you ascend, you start seeing yourself differently and you feel a very strong need for change. Everything you know is not enough anymore and you want more. And you also realize the answers you are looking for are not in the material plane. And I am not an advocate. I'm not saying you should divorce your spouse, you should leave your career. But I do think that there's definite energy mismatches that occur. For instance, you can marry somebody and you get along great, you're very compatible, and 20 years later or less, you just realize you've been really working on yourself and they haven't. And now it doesn't feel right for you anymore. It's because you're not the same person, but they are. That doesn't make them bad or wrong. It doesn't make you good or better. It just is the situation. And so, yay, here's Roz. And so you just accept that and you move on and you bless that person and you make, if you need to separate, you need to create a new life, you need to get a new job, you do it in a way that doesn't damage other people, as much as possible so that, you can move on. I see Roz is getting her treatment. She looks like she's on oxygen, but she is not.
I'm on high.
Whoops. She just disappeared. That was weird. She'll be back. The second thing is that you become a truth seeker. Here she comes. Your eyes are suddenly wide open and what you see doesn't make sense to you anymore. And so you start reading, you study, you take classes, you go to workshops, you get a mentor, you spend hours searching for the truth behind whatever it is you want, behind everything maybe. You don't believe what you hear in the news necessarily anymore. You don't just believe everything you read or hear or see. You don't judge knowing only one side of a story anymore. You don't believe in something only because someone said something, and you're not interested in the personal opinion of anyone anymore. You don't care about gossip or drama. You simply know there's a higher reason behind everything and understand that that reason is the only thing you're interested in. And that changes everything. That's like a big shift out of 3D. Roz, I'm so glad you're here. What do you think is like the evidence? Like, what do you see with yourself or with other people, like as they're shifting into fifth dimension?
I think what I noticed the most is that people suddenly, within maybe the last year, are becoming so much more consciously, like intuitively tuned in on what's happening. Before it was like, I hate to say it, but politics as usual. People would observe things, they would mention things, but they weren't being perceptive about it. And I notice now I hear people mentioning more. In fact, so ironic. I just saw some clients of mine that have been in before, and they both were saying, they said, well, what do you think we should do about the situation, all these situations that are developing? And I just said, talk, pray, talk to your guidance. See, and they both were like, oh yeah, just talk to them. And that's kind of new for people to be open to hearing that. I mean, I've been saying, you should pray and maybe make some affirmations about this and focus your energy on this. but I don't think people ever really did it. I mean,
They went,
there's a
okay, Roz.
yeah, there's a limited group of people, but everybody else was just looking at me like, what? I think people are really shifting into a whole new perspective, and that opens that door to that fifth dimension.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I happened to see something online too, which was really interesting, where I was reading about how when they sent out the Hubble telescope many years ago, I think that was like in the 70s, the telescope showed all these galaxies and different locations. Now they're sending out the new telescope. I've already forgotten the name of the gentleman who created this, but they just sent this out and they're getting these pictures back, and it's it's kind of mind-blowing. I mean, you're still seeing all those galaxies, you're still seeing all of the amazing wide open perspective of the universe, but our mind is just looking at it differently. Like, whoa, there's there's more than we ever thought. There's So I really feel like all of these things are contributing. We're getting signs and we're getting information from everywhere, and they're all contributing to this.
I think the shift is pretty well underway.
I feel like people, there's always going to be a percentage of people who just want to hide under their rock, and they don't want to have to deal with anything new, and they don't want to have to acknowledge that they're being challenged to open doorways and peer out and see what's going on. But I feel like for the first time, maybe a lot of people, and I happen to notice, I don't watch the news a lot, but when I do, what I notice is people are becoming more, I would say they're more analytical about other people's conduct now. And I think that's a part of that fifth dimension opening too, because you start to look at people's conduct and behavior and go, well, hey, this isn't cool. And there's a lot of people now that are saying that. And you have to open to that bigger spiritual picture in order to embrace that fifth dimension.
I think the flip side of that is that there's also, on an individual basis, people being more introspective and taking time to think about why someone might have done something or said something to them, and trying to come up with like what it may they be going through that would cause them to do that. What is the kindest possible reason? And it helps you not react in anger, to like jump back at them. Like that helps you get to that point where you realize that they're on their journey and they're learning the way they need to. And it's not about you. That's about them. Almost all the time, it's about them. And I think that's another like awareness that is you get as you're shifting, or that part of you is already in fifth dimension. We were talking about how I don't know anybody who's shifted straight from third or fourth dimension completely into fifth dimension in an instant. It's a slow slide, and there's parts of you that get there sooner than others. And that's why it's like I went through the list of like, here's some signs you're living in the fifth dimension. But if you have some of them, you're doing good things because you're making your way into the fifth dimension. You're doing it. Another one's recognizing you have a soul mission, a divine purpose. And Roz and I see people all the time coming in and saying, I know I'm supposed to do something more meaningful. I've been doing this and I loved it. And I'm supposed to do something that's of service. I'm supposed to do something with my spiritual gifts, or I'm supposed to do something to help people in a more meaningful way. We see that regularly. And to me, that's a sign. I always know that person is doing their spiritual work, because that's a sign that part of you is moving into fifth dimension, because I think we all have a life purpose. One of our life purposes that every one of us has is to grow, to be a better person, to grow personally and spiritually in this lifetime, to learn our lessons. End of story. And then some people have life purpose beyond that. So, you're already living one of them and you probably don't even know it.
Or more.
Or more. Yeah. Another one is you become an observer. You're able to just sort of pull back emotionally and watch a situation, whether it's personal or national, international, and you're able to pull out of the emotions and watch that as an observer, which gives you that detachment, gives you the ability to think more logically and to see all sides and to understand a little bit better of what's happening behind that, rather than getting caught up in it, in the uproar. Being part of the uproar is not going to help you on your spiritual journey or your personal journey. What do you think about, I really like this one, like that you start to respect your body as the spiritual vessel it is. Like, I think people start thinking about what they're putting in their body, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, drugs, sugar, salt, high fats, chemicals, they start thinking about their diet. And I've always seen that as like part of a spiritual cleansing process, but I can understand how that spiritual cleansing process that can cycle through multiple times in a lifetime can lead to eventually purifying your body so that your body's ready to shift into fifth dimension, because you can't take toxins into the fifth dimension. You're actually preparing your body to be in a crystalline state, which doesn't require food. So you might eat, your appetite might decrease. You might want less food, lighter meals. And it's part of your body preparing for that fifth dimension body that you will have, the reality that you will have. Anything else you want to say about that, Roz?
I think that's a really important thing to take a look at, because I've certainly noticed in the last, also in around the last maybe 6 months to a year, my interest in consuming good stuff has really dropped down to nothing. In fact, a lot of days I have difficulty coming up with something to eat. And I don't have, I never was like a big dessert eater or anything, but I had certain, things that I really liked. And even those things now are not tempting. So it's pretty weird. If you notice that going on, you might want to start to keep track of that and really pay attention, because obviously, I mean, some foods that we take in are far better for us than others. And preparing your body to enter a state of stasis and of the crystalline, state, it's a lot different than, all of the fast food and all of the shifting that we do.
The highest frequency food is whole foods. And I don't mean the store chain. I'm talking about foods as they come out of the earth in the state they're in. So raw vegetables or lightly cooked vegetables,
Organic.
or organic, things like that is very important because it has much higher frequency. And I know it's more expensive. I know. But do what you can, find your sources where you can. One good thing you can do is to buy your produce locally from small farmers, because they're less likely to use a bunch of chemicals, and it's going to be healthier for you from the area where it's grown. It's the closest you're going to get if you can't have your own little garden. But another thing too is the type of water you drink. Pure water, being careful about your water and making sure you drink mostly water. But that's just one tiny piece of this. And I know we are out of time. Roz, do you want to say one more thing on today's topic?
I think the water part is huge. So really do a little research on that and take a look, because it's shocking. You know, finding water that is the closest thing to pure. I mean, there's so much discussion of that online, but the reality is the actual pursuit of it. It's pretty challenging.
It is. And there's a lot of choices out there, but just make sure you're primarily drinking water. And I'm sure if you're tuning into this show, you're probably already in process of shifting into fifth dimension, and you're interested in shifting as fully and quickly as you can. And I hope that today's show gives you some help with that, how to get there and how to recognize that you're having success with the process. If you want to know more about us or our services, please visit our website, SedonaSoulSisters.com. Please subscribe to our podcast and like us, because it always puts a smile on our face. And tune in next Friday. It's a pre-recorded subject, and it is Paranormal Events on the Rise. I know you're going to like that one. In the meantime, we hope you have an enlightening week.